Hello, Year 8. So for this topic, this is what we will be doing for the rest of this year. Uh, for this topic, if possible, it would be good if you could print this handout out. Okay, it's quite a few pages, all right. But if you can print it out, that would be really good. If you can't print it out, don't worry. Follow along on the video, and then any part where there'll be gaps where I draw something or I might write in some notes. You can do that in your exercise book, all right. But if you've managed to print this out, you don't need your exercise book until we answer the questions. If you haven't got this printed out, then you will need your exercise book to make extra notes. So the first thing is that on the very first page, we've got this this knowledge organizer. Okay, so these are the key words that are going to come up in this topic. All right. Now, some of these we've seen before. Okay, things like ecosystem, or I think probably things like herbivore and carnivore you'll be familiar with, and predator and prey. All right. But there are other things such as bioaccumulation and pyramids of biomass that you might not be familiar with, and I'll explain those as we go through. But you should be using this, as I've shown you in class, to test yourself on the key terms. So the way you do that is you can cover these up, all right, and then you can write your answers in for each one, okay, and then once you've finished, reveal it, check which ones you got right, which ones you got wrong. Any you got wrong, do it again. Okay, so that's something that's really good to be doing, just so you have access to those words. Will make everything much easier to understand. All right, so let's get started. All right, so page 1, section 1, food chains and food webs. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. All right, so a food chain is a diagram that shows what an organism eats, and you remember an organism is any living thing. And it shows the transfer of energy between organisms. In a food chain, an arrow points from an organism that is eaten towards the organism that eats it. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, if we take an example, if you eat a beef burger, the food chain would look like this. So this is you, the human. Okay, and what do you eat? Well, you are eating the cow. You are eating the cow. All right, so the arrow points from the cow to you. All right, now the most common mistake here is that you'll put the arrow pointing, well, if I eat the cow, the arrow goes from me to the cow. No, if you eat the cow, the arrow goes from the cow to you. Why? Because it also shows the transfer of energy. So you get the energy that's in the beef burger. That energy goes into you. All right, now where does that cow get its energy from? Well, it gets its energy from grass. So the cow eats the grass, and the energy in the grass goes into the cow, and the energy in the cow goes into the human. And that's what the food chain shows. All right, so let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail. The first organism in the food chain, so in this case, that's grass, is always called a producer. Okay, so a producer in this case is grass. All right, and so that's one of the words on our table here, producer. All right. Okay. It converts energy in sunlight into glucose through a reaction called photosynthesis. All right. So you might have thought, well, if the human gets its energy from the cow and the cow gets its energy from grass, where does the grass get its energy from? And the answer is it gets its energy from the sun. So this is the sun. All right. And this is the light energy. Okay, but we don't include this part in the food chain. We just start with the producer. So it's called a producer because it is producing glucose. It's making the glucose. It's making its own food. All right, and all the other organisms in a food chain, so in this case the cow and human, they are called consumers. Because they are consuming other organisms. So grass does not eat anything. Grass takes sunlight and makes food. But the cow eats the grass and the human eats the cow. So cows and humans, they're called consumers. Okay? Now, typically, second organism in the food chain will be a herbivore, in this case the cow. So the cow only eats plants. All right, so cows don't go around eating horses, and cows don't eat humans. Cows just eat grass, so they are herbivores. The third organism in a food chain will be a carnivore. All right, so an animal that eats other animals. Now, in this case, the human is a special case. The human is an exception. However, there are exceptions to this, such as humans, which are omnivores, and we eat both plants and animals. All right, so in other cases, you might have an animal that just eats other animals, and that would be a carnivore. All right, so I'm going to give you now some other examples of food chains. Some food chains you might see in your garden would be things like lettuce would be eaten by slug, and a slug would be eaten by a hedgehog. So that's one example that you might see in your garden. Another one might be, or you might see out and about, would be, let's say you have acorns from a tree, would be eaten by a squirrel, but a squirrel would be eaten by a fox. And then one you probably won't see in your garden would be, let's say, some grass would be eaten by a zebra. If you are seeing this in your garden, you might need to tell someone. And the zebra might be eaten by a lion. Okay, now, all of the examples that I've given you have only got 3 things in them, but that's not always going to be the case. So, hedgehogs might be eaten by owls. Foxes could be eaten by, in the wild, would be eaten by an eagle. Okay, now lion, that's probably where the food chain ends. Okay, I don't think anything's going to be hunting down lions. All right, so some of these food chains can go on for quite a long time. Others will be quite short. Right, and these are all things. These are producers. These are all things that grow and make their own food, and then these are all consumers. Okay, now remember, the arrow shows the transfer of energy. Okay, transfer of energy, and it's really important that you remember that it shows the transfer of energy, and it always points from the thing that's eaten to the thing that eats it. Okay, so carrying on. Not all of the energy in an organism is transferred to the next organism in a food chain. In fact, only around 10% of the energy is transferred. So, in the example that we had above, grass, cow, human, 10% of the energy in the grass consumed by a cow would be available for the human eating the hamburger. Or, in other words, to produce a burger with 2,000 kilojoules of energy, the cow would need to eat 20,000 kilojoules worth of grass. Okay, so what that means is, if I have 20,000 kilojoules, now kilojoules, remember, is the units for energy, kilojoules worth of grass, okay, now I'm going to get, when I have my hamburger, so to the human, I'm only going to get 2,000 kilojoules. So in order for the human to get 2,000 kilojoules worth of energy in the burger, the cow needs to eat 20,000 kilojoules worth of grass. Okay, I'll say that again. So the human wants to eat the burger, all right? And the burger has 2,000 kilojoules worth of energy in it. How much energy does the cow need to eat in order to get to make that 2,000 kilojoules? It needs to eat 20,000 kilojoules worth of energy. So why is that? So why does the cow need to eat so much energy to produce a 2,000 kilojoule burger? Okay, now the reason is that the rest of the energy is used by the cow for movement and digestion, or lost to the surroundings as heat. All right, so you need to remember that the cow is eating the grass, all right, but it's also losing energy at the same time. Okay, energy is lost. All right, which means that it can't convert all that energy into the burger for the human. All right, so it needs to use some energy. So it eats 20,000 kilojoules of energy. All right, 2,000 goes into the burger, 18,000 goes into things like walking around, mooing, digesting the food, that kind of thing. All right, and then there's 2,000 kilojoules left over for the human. So I might have here, we can say 20,000 kilojoules of energy in my grass. And where does that 20,000 kilojoules of energy go? Well, 2,000 kilojoules goes to the human in the burger, and then the other 18,000 is used for things like moving and digesting and thinking and all the other things that cows like to do. Okay, so excellent. What I'd like you to do now is, just to make sure that we're all 100% happy with this process, I've got here 2 questions. All right, lions eat giraffes, which eat acacia trees. Draw a food chain to show this. And impalas eat acacia trees. Cheetahs, which are eaten by lions, eat impalas. Draw a food chain to show this. So I want you to now pause the video and draw these 2 food chains. And then carry on and I'll show you the answers. Okay, so pause now. Okay, so you should have drawn out 2 food chains. If you haven't drawn those 2 food chains out, you need to pause it and have a go at it. All right, otherwise this is what they should look like. So lions eat giraffes, which eat acacia trees. So my acacia tree, that's my producer. So it should look like this. It will start with my acacia tree. And then the giraffes eat the acacia tree. So the energy goes into the giraffe. And the lion eats the giraffe. So it looks like that. All right, so if you got that, well done, give yourself a tick. Next, impalas eat acacia trees. Cheetahs, which are eaten by lions, eat impalas. Draw a food chain to show this. So it's a little bit more complicated, but we're going to start again with my producer, the acacia tree. And impalas eat those. Any of these animals, if you're not sure what they look like, just at the end you can go Google it, have a look at what these look like. And cheetahs, which are eaten by lions, eat impalas. So a cheetah eats an impala, so that's cheetah. And cheetahs are eaten by lions, so that would be a lion. All right, so if you got that, well done. Now, you'll see that these 2 are similar. So I've got an acacia tree here, an acacia tree here, and I've got a lion here and a lion here. Now, food chains are very, very simple, but actually in the wild, there are lots of interesting things that happen. So, for example, up here, I had a hedgehog was eaten by an owl and a fox was eaten by an eagle, but actually sometimes a fox might eat a hedgehog. All right, so they might end up moving in between food chains. All right, so that's what is shown by a food web. So food webs are where multiple food chains are combined. This happens because organisms can eat more than one type of organism. For example, as well as cows, sheep also eat grass and can be used to produce lamb burgers. This gives us the simple food web down here. So grass before was eaten by cows, and then we eat the hamburgers, whereas actually sheep could also eat grass, and then we eat a lamb burger. So we have now a food web, all right, which is a much more, it's more complicated, but it's a more accurate reflection of what happens, all right. And of course, there are all kinds of other things that eat grass that we also might end up eating. And in fact, if we wanted to really make it accurate, we could even, if this wasn't perhaps grass, if it was something else similar to grass, there might be an arrow going directly from the grass to the human. All right. So let's have a look now at question number 3. So question number 3. Join the food chains in question 1 and 2 to make a food web. So you need to pause the video now and have a go at that question. Pause. Unpause. All right. Good. So how can we combine these 2 food chains to make a food web? Well, the producer is the same in both. So that's my acacia tree. And my top predator, okay, my lion, is the top predator in both cases. And then, so we have the acacia tree is eaten by the giraffe, which is eaten by the lion, or the acacia tree is eaten by the impala, which is eaten by the cheetah, which is eaten by the lion. So you can see that really, when a lion eats a cheetah or a giraffe, the energy originally comes from the same place. It all comes from the acacia tree. Okay, so the lion is getting energy from the acacia tree. Well, really, the lion's getting energy from the sun. Okay, but there are two different pathways for that energy from the sun. So the energy from the sun goes to the acacia tree, the producer, which is then eaten by the impala, and the cheetah, and then the lion. Or it's the sun, acacia tree, giraffe, then lion. Okay? So, what I'd like you to do now is you need to have a go at all of these questions. Okay, so question 4 to question 10. All right, and that is the work that you need to do this week. All right, so next Wednesday, at the start of the lesson, the first thing you need to do, of course, is do the quiz yourself. Then the second thing you need to do, all right, so it'll be every lesson. So number 1, every lesson will be quiz. Really remember all that really good work we've been doing. Then number 2, I'll make a video with the answers to these questions. Okay, so mark this work. And then number 3 will be for you to watch the new video. And then number 4 will be to answer the next set of questions. And that's what every lesson will be like, all right? So next week, you'll do your quiz that you do every lesson. You can do it every day if you want. Then you'll mark this work by watching a video where I explain the answers to these. Then you'll watch a new video, and the new video will be on disruption to the food chain. And then you'll have to answer some questions, and that'll be these questions. And then the week after, it'll be the exact same again. So every week will be just like this, all right? And what I'd like you to do also is these questions here, you need to upload a picture of these questions, if possible. So I can see that you're doing it, and also I can see what common mistakes people are making, and I can address those in the video. All right, so well done Year 8. I hope you're enjoying this new topic. It's a fascinating topic, and I'm going to really enjoy talking about this for the next few weeks. All right, enjoy the rest of your week.